Hi, I'm Jennifer Janish, owner of Adored Salon and Adored Signature Hand-Tied Hair Extensions. I'm obsessed with curly hair. I cut it, style it, and extend it, and this podcast is all about my curly girl obsessions that stretch far beyond just curly hair. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Curly Girls Obsessions podcast. It's me, Jennifer, coming from Adored Salon, which I pretty much always record here, but I decided that the background in our break room was just not aesthetically pleasing as it would be if I came out into the salon. And so today I've asked the community for questions and to email us if you have any topics that you want me to cover. And one of the main topics is, how did I become a curly hair specialist? So it started, obviously, my whole life I've had curly hair. And as a stylist, I always thought I knew how to do curly hair until I went to go get certified in a technique for curly hair cutting and styling. So, if you listen to my first podcast, you know that my career has had many different changes throughout the 32 years that I've been a hairstylist. And one of the biggest ones probably was the shift into curly hair. So, when I graduated beauty school, you kind of did everything under the sun to get clients. You did haircuts, women's, children's, men. You did all different kinds of coloring techniques. Pretty much, though, then, all that people were getting were root touch-ups and highlights, either a partial or a full. And perms were big. What else? Like men's haircuts. I did do a lot of men's hair cutting, and I even did nails, believe it or not, for quite some time. I had broken my hand. I moved out of my parents' house when I was 20, got my own apartment, had a really nice car, had an amazing wardrobe, and like within 4 weeks of moving into that apartment, I broke my hand in a terrible car accident. And obviously, I could not cut hair with my right hand in a cast. So, real fast, I learned how to do nails, and I took over all the nail clients in the salon, and the girl who also did hair and nails only did hair because she covered all my clients. And then throughout the years, my career changed different ways, different salons. And then I was working in my house for quite a long time. And exactly, I think it was 8 years at the point when my dear friend named Andrea had called me and asked me if I wanted to come and work in a salon that she was working in. One of their experienced stylists in the salon had left a note on the desk on New Year's Eve and said that she was moving to Florida and not coming back. She had worked there for 17 years, and they needed an experienced hairdresser to take over her clientele. So, very interesting scenario. That just doesn't happen very often, where an experienced stylist would leave like that and not take any of her clients, and that they would need someone with that much experience to come in and take over her clients because they were used to an experienced stylist. And at the time, she said to me, there's going to be one thing that you're going to have to agree to, and it's going to be that you're going to have to go to WEDOD in New York and get certified as a curly hairstylist. I was sitting there at dinner with my family on New Year's Eve. Everybody was sick at the table. I was in my pajamas and it was dinner time. We're all sniffling. We've all got some type of upper respiratory infection. And I said, okay, I'm going to have to talk to Brad, my husband, because obviously he was used to me working in my house. I had the salon in there for 8 years, I think it was at that point. And I was available all the time and always there for our children at the drop of a dime because I worked out of my house. I did treat it though like an actual salon. I always had boundaries, I had hours, I had pricing that I stuck with. So it was super professional, but it was in my house. And I knew the minute that I hung up that phone, I was getting that job. I was so starved for connection with other stylists and camaraderie, and just being in that salon environment and being able to talk with other people, throw ideas around. I just knew that I was ready to be out of my house and be back into that work life, go. Even though I was in it at my house, there was times that things, even though I said it was completely professional, I do remember doing people's hair in my pajamas a couple times from having really late nights with my children, no sleep, you name it. So as I hung up that phone, I knew I was taking this on. And I told my husband, and I think he was shocked because he said he was shocked. He was like, "What do you mean you're going to leave us?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's time." So I had to interview for it. And the woman who hired me and owned the salon actually really did kind of put me through the ringer with it. There was a couple other people that came that wanted the position, and I was relentless with the fact that I wanted it and I was going to get it because I knew it was meant for me. And so I remember the day that she told me that I had the position. It was my husband's birthday. We were on a weekend getaway for, if it was his work holiday party. It was January 15th. And it was just a really nice way to start out the year. So I started there. I knew I was going to Weedad. And at this point, I had never, ever, ever had a salon that invested in me to get any kind of education. It just really wasn't like a thing. So to have someone hire me and send me to New York to learn this technique, cutting and styling, was just almost overwhelming at times, and so exciting because I was excited to learn a new technique. I was overwhelmed in the fact that there was already two other stylists in the salon who had gone and succeeded in the class. So I knew the pressure was on. It was a pass fail, which isn't really a thing in the hair world. Typically, if you take a class, you're certified, or you just like you've watched the technique, you know what you're doing. This was so much more. It was 2 full days. Each day was roughly 10 hours, and um 3 models the first day and 2 models the second day. But myself, being the way that I am, I wanted to make sure that I really knew what I was doing. On the second day, I asked to take a third model, and it was in New York. I'm from the Midwest. People in the Midwest are, I just can only say that I feel we're a little bit nicer than people in New York, especially when it comes to their hair. And maybe it was the fact that I was at this training and people knew that they were models. So they might have been on edge of getting their hair messed up, to say. I'm not quite sure. But New Yorkers are pretty blunt in comparison to Chicagoans. So I get to New York, I'm by myself. I've never left my family. And I was nervous to fly by myself. I was insanely afraid of taking a cab ride from the airport to the hotel. And it was a good hour. I stayed on the phone with my husband. I don't know. I, I watched some crazy Liam Neeson movie the week before I left. And it was, I think that series he did was Taken or something. And of course, that particular movie was someone who got in a cab and all hell broke loose from there. So I really, really scared myself. And we talked on the phone. I had never stayed in a hotel by myself by that point. It's kind of crazy to think that, right? Like that's how much of a sheltered life I kind of lived. But I'm also the kind of person that doesn't really mind putting myself out there and taking a risk when it comes to professional life, right? So I go to the training, and the one thing that Andrea had told me to do was to make sure that I did all ethnicities of hair because I was going to experience them in the salon. So we go through the morning product knowledge. They show us the first haircut. There's a sea of, gosh, I want to say there was probably 50 models waiting for all of us for this class. And I saw this girl, and she was African American, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna knock this one out of the way first. I'm gonna do her hair. It looked short. It looked like it was like maybe an inch and a half long because it was close to her head. And I was like, oh, this will be a piece of cake. Lo and behold, I get her in the chair to do the consultation, and her hair literally looked like a sponge looking into it. Like it was swirled, and so you could see the natural curl, but then you could see like these pockets of holes. And I instantly turn into a cold sweat because I'm like, you definitely have no idea what you just got yourself into. And my trainer at the time, her name was Iona, and I think I pronounced that right. And she had at home an 18-month-old baby, and she was 8 months pregnant with twins. So you can just imagine her threshold for patients at that point were like 0, negative 100 probably. And I was like, okay, how is this gonna go? And she was like, take her in back, and you're going to meet an assistant back there. Her name is Carmelo, and she's going to help you comb through her hair. And she literally, at that moment, starts scolding the model for her hair. She's like, when was the last time you detangled your hair? When was the last time you washed it? Her answers, she had just moved from Alabama to New York. She was working in marketing. I think it was for MAC Cosmetics, which was pretty cool, and she was 21, and her mom always did her hair. She had not combed through her hair since she moved to New York. So 8 weeks of not combing through her hair. I thought I was going to die. It was a moment of sheer and utter panic. I go in the back, lo and behold, Carmela or Carmelo, I can't remember which one she was, had this bleached out blonde afro that was, it just was like amazing to me because I knew her hair naturally was black and it literally was white and it was still connected to her head. And she had created perfect curl formation in this hair. So going from black to white like is super drying on your hair. You typically lose a ton of curl and a lot of hair when you do something like that. But I just looked at her like she was my savior. And she 100% was. If she could harness her hair and get it to look the way that she got it to look, I knew she was going to be the one who was going to help me through this seamlessly and effortlessly. We both had 8-ounce bottles of deep treatment and this wide double detangler wide tooth comb by Weedad, and we got to work. It was the hardest thing to get through. Those tangles, it was just unbelievable. The girl was crying, and she knew that we couldn't stop, or she was going to have her hair shaved. By the time we got through the tangles and we had worked that deep treatment all the way through her hair, the top layer of her hair came to here, and the back of her hair was to here. Now, just take that in for a minute. That's how tightly coiled to her head all that hair was. So now I'm looking at this girl like, holy shit, I really got myself into something here because I gotta cut this hair. I've never cut this hair. Prior to that part of my career, that just wasn't a thing. I mean, it just was not a thing. It was like there were Caucasian salons, African American salons. And at least from where I live, that was just the way it went. Like, we're not in a big city here in Lombard, but I still would think that even in a big city, unless you were weed-eyed, where you were known for curly hair, that just wasn't going to happen because there was just now not a trust level built up. So I started doing her hair. And she was the sweetest thing. She's like, I have so much faith in you. You're going to do an amazing job on my hair. Look at how you got through these tangles. Like, that is huge. And so I start cutting it, and my educator was amazing. She helped me through it the entire way. And then when we went to style her hair, she's like, you're not going to do the typical rake and shake styling technique that you've seen. You're going to do a 2-strand twist on her. Okay, great. Like, I've never seen that, and I'm here to learn. So teach me. And we took her hair in little squares all over her head. I would say like an inch and a half by an inch and a half, worked the product through, combed through each section, pulled it tight, and just twisted it around and let it be down. And then she sat underneath a hair dryer for a good solid 2 hours, I would say, for it to get totally dry. When we took it out, her hair looked like mine. It was just these, I just loved the curls that she had, the fullness and the tears that she was brought to. She's like, my hair has never, ever looked this amazing. Thank you so much. So that was the first client. The second client, I could have done no wrong to her hair. She loved the whole process. She loved where she was. It was great. Everything was awesome. And then my third client was from Tennessee, and she always had layers cut in her hair, and she wanted me to do exactly that and not the technique that I was taught that I had to do to create this curly look. And she was a bit of a struggle. So I really should retract my statement about the New Yorkers, because it was that Tennessee girl that did me in. Really, the first one scared me, but I accomplished it. It was great. I overcame every fear that was holding me back. I had no choice. And the second one was easy. God knew that I needed something slid in there easy while the other one was drying under, the first client was drying under the dryer. The third client, again, I was given, maybe I got too cocky with the second one and I needed to be knocked back down a little bit, but she was hard. And then that day, I made the mistake of wearing crazy high-heeled boots. My feet were killing. I left there. I found the first nail place I could find. And I was like, all I want is for you to massage my feet. I mean, my feet are freaking killing me. And so imagine that. Like, why would I do that to myself? The stress of the class and high heels? No, never again. So, and then the second day, I did really well. But I did second guess myself a lot. And when they called us in to give us our like grading scenario and tell us, if we passed or failed, and I think I might have, I did not cry because I'm not a crier, but I really felt a lot of emotion and a lot of anxiety. And they were like, girl, you did so good. You had some of the craziest clients. And I forgot to mention that at one point, my mentor, the person educating me, kept slapping my wrist because she did not like the way that I was shaking the hair. She's like, you're too tense, and she'd hit my wrist. I was like, what is she doing? And the more I styled that client's hair, the more she slapped my wrist. She's like, you need to relax your wrists or this style is just not ever going to turn out. Which, can you imagine the high heels, the chaos, that like everything that could have made me like just crawl in a hole was actually happening. And I got through it. I was so happy when I was done. I was so happy that I passed. And I came home. My family had a newfound appreciation for me. I'll tell you that because I had never left them. And I got to the salon and now was game time. So, like I had said, I never had a salon invest in me like that in any kind of education. And they flew me to New York. They paid for the hotel, they paid for the class. It was a pretty big expense. So now I knew I had to perform. And if you watched my six-figure podcast um, in a prior episode, it's like how to become a six-figure stylist. I knew what I needed to do. And I knew that I needed to be crazy successful just for myself. Like when someone puts themselves out there for you like that and they pay for something and then they invest in you, I believe that you better give it back in return. And so immediately I would get there on a Saturday and I would have 8 weed out haircuts back to back. I worked like 9 hours and I'd have 8 of these haircuts back to back with no breaks, no lunches. And I still managed to, I remember one Saturday when I had those 8 clients, nobody was down for a deep treatment. And I really knew the benefit that this deep treatment would give their hair. So I really tried to make it my mission that every single one of my clients that was getting a weed out cut was also getting that deep treatment because one, it makes my life easier as a stylist to be able to cut through their hair if it's not crazy dry. And two, I knew that my style was going to just look so good with that deep treatment in their hair that it was my mission. And I'll never forget this one Saturday. Every single person got that deep treatment. I think I only ran to like an hour later than what I was supposed to be there. And that was 8 people getting 8 deep treatments, each deep treatment lasting 15 minutes. And I had an hour to cut and style and finish these clients. So, but it all worked out and I did it. Like it was golden. And the greatest part of it was I went to this salon without a clientele, just going to maintain this other stylist clientele. So my goal there really and truly was that I didn't want to do her highlighted clients and her root touch-up clients. I only wanted to do her curly hair clients because one, it was a higher level service. It commanded a higher price. Two, I was leaving my babies with a nanny all day long that I had to pay for. Whereas before in my house, I worked nights and one whole day on a Tuesday, but during the day when I worked, they slept. So again, I wasn't paying for a nanny then. So now I had daycare costs. I had the more stress of leaving my house and organizing everything before I left and maintaining everything for my 4 children while I was at work. So that is where I learned the importance of niching down, right? And how niching down to my specialty was going to produce the maximum dollar amount for me while I was at the salon. But I also was going to be able to perfect that craft so much more because that's all that I was doing day in and day out. And it was super creative. I could have a client with a slight wave, hardly any wave, and do the weed odd cut and style on them. And then I could have a client all the way to kinky, tight, curly hair where I would do the cut and do a 2-strand twist on their hair. Or not, some people, they really wanted that big fullness. And so we styled it in all that glory. Like, I'm all about bigger hair, especially with curly hair. Like, it's always going to be fuller. And so I just saw a wide array of curls. It was just like the mecca of hair for me. And then when I decided to go out on my own and open my own salon, I knew that the salon was just going to be centered around curly hair. While we still did straight hair and we still did root touch-ups, partials, and full foils, our main thing was curly hair. When we started with our website, all I did was SEO for curly hair. There was nothing else that I wanted people to know about Adored Salon, except for the fact that we were curly hair specialists. So that is how the salon started. And now, like, if you Google curly hair specialists and you're within our Google range, you're going to get us. I don't even really know how far of a range that goes. And we've since stopped calling the cut the Weedod cut. Like, we have tweaked things, changed things. The company also has been sold and changed a bit. They've also changed their education a bit. So I really pride myself on the fact that we learned from Weedod herself, the original person who created that brand and created the technique. And so we now call it the Adored Signature Curly Haircut and Style. A lot of things in the salon are called Adored Signature because, again, we've put so much time and effort into educating ourselves that we have a coloring technique that we call Adored Signature full color, Adored Signature partial color. And through the years of working with curly and understanding how curly is actually more fragile than straight hair, and how much time and the product that has to go in to keep that hair conditioned when doing a lightening service or a color transformation is imperative, because you can break off curly hair so much easier than straight hair. And lightener is bleach, right? Like, that's what lightener is. It's bleach. So why is curly hair not as strong? Every bend and twist in the strand creates a raised cuticle. Straight hair has a tight, compact cuticle. It keeps it safe. Curly hair has always got an open cuticle, which makes it more vulnerable. So in order to have great curly hair with dimensional color, you need to have this technique that is going to actually show the lightness, because curly hair starts from the base curling outward, exposing that darker tone. So like when straight hair is highlighted, it lays like a blanket. You could just highlight on straight hair, above the ear and up, and create a whole blonde hair look because the hair lays on top of each other. But with curly hair, that's not the case. So if you don't have a technique catered to coloring curly hair, the highlights are going to get lost in the hair, and they're definitely going to get lost in the ends. In the beginning of my career, I would do color on curly hair and I'd find myself so heavily disappointed, because I'd be like, gosh, I just put in 100 foils and now it doesn't even look like I did anything to this hair. And the reality is that I had to go through that to learn that curly hair takes a whole different technique. So learning curly hair with a specific method and a start point and an ending point, right? Like, you start at A and you end at B. There's no in between guesswork on how to cut it the way that we cut curly hair. There's a method. We start out and we finish. And the other thing is that when you learn curly hair, you really haven't learned it fully if you let your clients leave with wet hair, if they request a style. So at our salon, we get your hair totally dry under a hooded hair dryer at the end. actually, I shouldn't even say that. There's so much that goes into the style on the front end that when we end it, so that we don't frizz up the ends that we've used with a diffuser, we sit our clients under one of these awesome things, which is a hooded hair dryer, to get the interior dry. And then once it's totally dry, we can break apart the gel cast, open up the curls. They get super full. We've also learned different styling techniques along the way to create more fullness so that the curls aren't super flat to your head on the first day. We try our best. But as a curly girl, and knowing what a curly girl set is, it is going to be flatter on day one. Day 2, 3, 4, 5, like the hair just gets better and better. And with a proper curly girl set, you can typically go a good 7 days without washing your hair, even more if you would like. But it comes down to proper product usage and technique. And over the years of doing curly hair and just loving it, embracing it, and being hyper focused on it, all of these things just come with ease after time because you learn. And if you use the same product day in and day out, you also know which works best on what hair type. So that's how I got into curly hair. It kind of was by dumb luck. I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that I would have gone down that road. I would have never imagined how much niching down to one specific thing would change the trajectory of my career and also hone in on the podcast that I had spoke to before, which was the how to become a six-figure stylist. You really and truly, when you are a hairstylist and you stop becoming a hobbyist, right? Like there's so many of us that do this job and we discount our sister's friend Susie because she's her friend, and family and um friends get this discount, or someone says, well, I'm just getting a trim. Is that cost the same as a cut? What they don't realize is what they're paying for is your time, your experience, and how much you have spent going to all of these other classes. I never went to college, but I can tell you that my continuing education hours are the equivalent to if I went to college, all the things that I have paid for after the fact, trying to learn how to fine tune curly, how to fine tune the extensions, how to learn extensions, like so many different things that I've done over the course of the years that has just added to that career. But again, honing in on what it is that I really wanted to do and getting rid of all the other services that I never really enjoyed, to be honest with you. And it just created a new level of success in my career. I am forever grateful to Andrea for calling me that day. And I really am happy that I was able to get into that salon and be the one that they invested in for curly hair. And here I am today, sitting here in my hair salon that specializes in curly hair. So I hope that was a great little insight in. This is a shorter podcast than I've done in the past. This is where I try to keep the time limit, but I talk so much, I tend to go over. Next week, I'm going to talk to you about how I started with hair extensions. And that road was really chaotic, but again, so many learning lessons along the way, so much growth, so much gratitude for where I started and where I am today. It's just unbelievable when I think back to the little girl who was 16 years old in beauty school, and her beauty school teacher said to her, you're lucky if you're going to make $250 a week as a hairstylist. You're going to do this career because you love it. And I was like, no, girl, I'm going to do this career because I'm going to freaking thrive and bust through that ceiling. And I'm going I'm gonna do some really amazing things. And honestly, I feel like I have. So I hope this podcast brings you joy. I hope it gives you motivation. I'm recording it on a Monday. It's raining here in Chicago, so I'm trying to be super upbeat. And yeah, I really appreciate your follow, your listen. If you could write a review, we would love that too. If you want to follow me on social media, it's Jennifer_Johnson_Janish on Instagram. And on TikTok, I just started. It's called Jennifer the Curly Girl, I think, or Jennifer Curly Girl. And that one I just started, so there's not much there. But you can also find Adored Salon on Instagram or adored_signature_hand tied_hair for our hair extensions account. I hope you give us a follow. And if you could write us a review, that would be great, or give us a rating. As always, send me an email or a DM if there's a topic you would like me to cover. And until next week, bye bye. Thank you.